Hey, I'm Talbot Davis, the pastor at Good Shepherd United Methodist Church, and I'm so glad that you have grabbed this material for Brave, that you've gathered together with friends or with family or both, and that you all collectively are getting ready to grow in your living relationship with Jesus Christ by digging into the book of Revelation in this whole series that we're calling Brave. Now, if you go to Good Shepherd, this is not a trick question. I expect you to be able to answer right back to the screen. The Bible is not a book, it is you got it. It's a library. And when you understand that it is a library written by a lot of authors over a long span of time in many different writing styles, that's so pivotal to understanding what an individual book in the Bible is about. You have to first understand what kind of writing is it. And if that's true of the first 65 books of the Bible, it's even more true in trying to understand this bewildering book of Revelation. What kind of writing is it? What is the style or the genre, if you want to use kind of a fancy word? And to help us think about that, what kind of style is the book of Revelation? I brought with me an envelope that I received not too long ago. And this envelope contained, as you might expect, a letter. I don't get many letters anymore, mostly emails, but on those rare occasions when people take the time to write me a letter and put it in an envelope, I read it with great eagerness. And as you see that I received this letter, think in your mind how absurd it would be for someone to write me a letter, and yet the contents of that letter had nothing to do with my life. How implausible it would be if the letter writer would write me a letter that had nothing to do with what I'm doing in the here and the now, but only had to do with events that were going to happen hundreds, if not thousands of years in the future. That's absurd. There's no way that's possible. Well, in all the conversation about the book of Revelation, what we most often overlook is the fact that fundamentally the book of Revelation is a letter. It's a letter written to 7 churches. And actually, all 7 of those churches are in what is today Turkey. Back then it was called Asia Minor. And we believe that this letter, going to churches in cities with names like Pergamon and Thyatira and Philadelphia and Laodicea, names you may have heard of, that we believe, in fact, we're quite certain, that the letter was meant to be delivered to each church in succession. And that the delivery system of the letter was almost like a circuit where the 7th church that received the letter was able to receive all of that which had been written to the 6 churches preceding. And it's so interesting because the Revelation 2 and 3 in particular, chapters 2 and chapter 3, are full of these letters to the different churches. And each letter to each church is almost like a performance review. Here's what you're doing well. Here's what you're doing poorly. Here's what I have in your favor. Here's what I have against you. And can you imagine, those of you who work publicly, can you imagine not only getting your performance review, but everybody else in your office or everybody else at the place where you work got to look over the shoulder of your supervisor as they were writing your performance review? Well, that's so much of what is going on in the book of Revelation. It starts out as a letter to these 7 churches. And I tell you that here at the very, very beginning of your conversations together. Because when you understand that Revelation is a letter, you realize it can't mean something to you that it didn't mean to them. That whatever the book of Revelation means to us in the 21st century can't be independent of what the book of Revelation meant to the 7 churches who received it in the first century. And so as we begin this deep dive into this often confusing but ultimately liberating book, I just want you to keep that at the forefront of your mind, that we're not to be looking in the book of Revelation for symbols of political realities in the 21st century or even the 20th century. We need to dig deep and see what it meant to its first audience, because they received it as a letter. And how do we take that mixture of correction and encouragement that the letter contains, and how do we apply those truths and those principles into our life? Today, you're really going to be seeing how it is that God goes to his infinite lengths to give his intimate touch. So in that light, I pray you all have a great conversation. Amen.